Hello and welcome back. Last time I showed you how to do a buttonhole, and the other thing that you need to use with a buttonhole is a button. And it does need to be attached generally, or else it'll just pop through and do you no good. I've gone ahead and already marked where the button needs to be because this is on my underwear, my drawers, and they are open crotch drawers, and honestly nobody on YouTube ever needs to see that on me, ever. So I did go ahead and mark them just by pulling them on to where my natural waist is, which for me, because I do have a pudgy little tummy, is just below the ribs. And then I pulled the waist around and held the buttonhole where it needed to be and just stuck a pen through. That is red ink, not blood, I promise. And just stuck a pen through and made a big old blobby mark there. And one of the secrets that I learned, and it's something that people laugh at me for, because if I take my sewing kit places, I'll open it up and people will see a handful of toothpicks sitting in there. So people make fun of me for this all the time. But one of the tricks that I learned is to actually use a toothpick to space the button correctly, because if the button is mashed flat and held really tightly into the fabric, it's hard to get that through there and to be able to, for it to actually hold onto the buttonhole. But if you space it just a little bit so that it's off and a little bit loose, then that buttonhole will go over it easily and it will hold a lot better. But before we actually put the button on, we do need to go ahead and start the thread. This is just the same thread that I used for the buttonhole. I did put a little knot in the end there, just an overcast knot, because it would have had the two open ends on this end as well as what was through the eye of the needle. And to get that started, I'm just going to put it underneath a couple of threads. Now I should use my thimble. Pull it through and then snag that loop to lock it down, just like you do with anything else. Great. And then I've got the button. I am just going to put the needle through one hole of the button, and then I'll take my toothpick and lay it here tight on the fabric. Hold the button in place with my thumb. Put the needle through the other hole and then through the fabric right next to where it is locked in place there. And pull it all tight. Tangle. There we go. And when I pull it tight, you can see there is a nice gap there in between the button and the fabric, so it's not pressed down tight. There's not going to be any sort of problem getting the buttonhole over that. And then you go up and you have to kind of feel with your needle to make sure that you're on the other side of the toothpick. And through the hole of the button, and pull it taut. And then down on the other side. And you do this 3 or 4 times. It really doesn't have to be that many stitches on the buttonhole itself, or buttonhole, on the button itself to hold it in place. Up. There's 3, and I will do one more. Also excited because it got cold. It's under 50 degrees, which is freezing here in Florida. So I get to wear a sweater I actually put socks on. It's amazing. Okay, so I took 4 loops over the top of the button to hold it in place. And you've still got that nice gap there. And you just pull the toothpick out. Now when you pull it out, you can look and you can see it's really fairly loose. And that looks really sloppy underneath there. So what you do to help fix that is you go through and you go up, and instead of going through the button, the hole in the button, you just go through the fabric. So you kind of fold the fabric so that the needle comes through in between the fabric and the button. And go ahead and pull it out. And then another trick that I learned to help keep the threads more sturdy and to make it more neat is you just wrap the thread itself around what's called the post, which is what you made underneath the button, in between the button and the fabric. Wrap it around a few times and then put your needle back through to the back side. So now we're looking at the back side, and you can see I'm just pulling the needle through. And then you tie it off. To tie it off, you wrap it around the stitches a few times. And it's just taking the needle, go underneath the stitches, and pull it through. That's 3, I'll do 1 more. 4. And then to keep it extra secure, you do the same thing that you did with the buttonhole and go through those loops, one direction, and then the other direction. Oh, that wasn't through. There we go. And then back the other way again. Keeping in mind that you do have to go over the top of a couple of threads, or else you're just going back and forth and pulling the thread through and leaving it loose. Park your needle and clip that thread close. So this is what the back side of the button looks like once it's stitched on. Of course, you've just got the button on the front. And you put it through the buttonhole. It's a nice fit. You can see that it's actually fairly tight with the buttonhole in there. It's nice and snug. And if you pull on the fabric, that's not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm giving it a fair pull. And because we spaced the buttonhole, we marked it correctly. If you look at the edge of the fabric, it's lining up neatly. It looks very nice. Focus, there we go. There's the focus. But it's lining up nicely and neatly. It looks very professionally done. There's enough room that you can get the buttonhole on and off of the button easily. This video is about half the length of the other one so far, but that is the easiest way to do a 2-hole button. To do a 4-hole button, you do basically the same thing, except for you make a little X in the middle instead of just going around and around and around. That's the only difference. Thank you. Again, I encourage you, practice, sew on a few buttons, show me how you're doing. Tag me on Instagram at Skuldsbane, SKULDSBANE, and show me your projects. I want to see.